Make sure your customer service is excellent customer service. Plan for that good customer service. And make sure that you have a plan that covers the entire service situation from that first point of contact with the customer all the way till closing the call and ending the ticket and ending the service. Now, your customers expect, and rightfully so, expect that first contact to be professional and friendly with their service technician. As a technician, you should know the problem to be addressed, the urgency of the situation, what computer software and hardware is going to need servicing. You should arrive with a complete set of all the equipment you're going to need to help service or help with the service call. You should greet the customer in a very friendly manner and shake hands to acknowledge them and let them know that you're there to help them. And make sure to listen and ask questions of the customer. If you're using a phone call, be professional. Identify yourself and the organization that you work for. Ask for and write down their name and number. Follow whatever company policies are in place to obtain any type of further information that's necessary. And be familiar with your customer service policies of the company. And open up the conversation with the caller to describe the problem. Let them get that information to you right away. Some of these questions that you might ask are like, what error messages are there? Are any type of unusual displays that you've happened to notice? Or are there any failures you've seen recently? Let them describe the problem. Maybe ask them to identify when the problem started. What programs or software were you using when this issue occurs? Ask questions like, did you move your computer system recently? All these type questions that you're asking the customer gets them involved and lets them know that you want to solve their issue, and it gets you that necessary information for your troubleshooting process. Now, once your interview is over with the customer, if you don't understand what they're trying to tell you, ask open-ended questions to try to narrow down the specifics of the problem. The more information you can get, the more helpful information you get, the better the chances of reaching a resolution quicker will be. Try to recreate the circumstances that existed when the problem occurred in as much detail as possible. Now, don't make any assumptions. Don't just think you know it right away. Make sure you get all the information possible. And make sure that you're using good manners with the customer at all times. Now, make sure this is really important for meeting your customer expectations is to establish a timeline with your customer for the completion of the project. Keep them informed along the progress of getting resolution for them. And make sure to give your customers an opportunity to make decisions about repairs. What's best, repair or replace? If there's an option for each, give them both options. Let them decide which is to their advantage by providing them all the information you can without using any of that technical jargon, and just making sure that they realize the impacts of each choice you give them. Now, when you're actually on site with a customer, make sure to do some simple things. Avoid any type of distractions. Don't answer personal calls on your cell phone. If they're calls from work, ask them if you can step out. You have an important call, but keep that call to a minimum. If you must, for any reason, excuse yourself from the customer, make sure you explain to them why you need to leave and that you'll be returning as soon as possible. Make sure that you keep all of your tools and such out of the customer's way. Don't impede on their work set. Make sure that you are keeping everything clean and professional for them, and make sure you protect your customers' confidential materials. Ask them if there's anything there that they would like to put away or close so that they don't feel worrisome about you seeing something you shouldn't. Now, working on site is one thing, but working with a customer on the phone is a totally different experience because it's going to require more interaction with your customers. You have to be able to visualize what the customer sees since you're not there. And this takes a great deal of patience on your part, as well as their patience in dealing with this over a phone and not having a technician right there in front of you. Make sure if something happens with the phone call at any point, if you're on a cell phone or if they're on a cell phone, make sure you call back immediately. Don't let them stew. Make sure you impose upon them that you want to solve their issue and you are there for them. Avoid other distractions such as eating or typing or drinking. Make sure that you are giving them your attention. If you have to put a caller on hold, make sure you give them an idea of how long you anticipate them being on hold, and make sure you stick to that and at least get back with them and acknowledge them and that you may need more time. Take your time with them and speak clearly and slowly so that they understand everything you're saying, and try to keep any type of small talk upbeat and positive with them to help their overall experience be positive. Now realize that all the customers that you deal with on the phone may not be very knowledgeable. So be specific with your instructions when asking them to do something, and don't ask the customer to do anything that might destroy settings or files without having them back up all that important information first. Make sure to continually ask the customer what they see of what's being displayed on the screen so you can help make sure that they are following your directions clearly. If at all possible, make sure you're doing the same thing that you're asking them to do on a computer that you have so that you can follow along with them. Make sure that you allow plenty of opportunity for your customers to ask questions to make sure that they fully understand your instructions so that you can help resolve their issue. It's a good practice sometimes to compliment the customer whenever you can. If the customer cannot help you solve the problem without a lot of coaching, tactfully request the caller have someone with more experience call you. This is a very sensitive thing to do, so be careful so that you do not offend your customers. Now sometimes you're going to deal with those customers that are just overly confident. In their mind, they are an IT expert. So when you're dealing with these customers that are overly confident, compliment the customer's knowledge and experience when possible. Sometimes you might need to slow down the conversation with them and to get this problem solved. Now don't back off from using your problem solving skills. Make sure you're still working together to achieve that resolution. And be careful, very careful, not to accuse the customer of making a mistake. Don't ever put that weight on them and put them on the defensive. Now even though the customer might be using technical jargon, do not use technical jargon back to them, as one of our key rules is just speak on general terms with all customers. Now even though you think you might have solved the issue, make sure that the customer decides when the work is truly done. Allow the customer to acknowledge that the service is finished. So before you leave, make sure you complete these type of tasks. Reboot the PC to make sure there are no other problems that exist. Allow the customer enough time to look things over and make sure that they are satisfied that everything they needed, that they reported that was not working, is now working. And make sure that you ask a user to verify any type of data that had to be restored is there. Make sure you review all that happened with the service call with the customer prior to leaving. Just kind of review that. Alright, there was an issue that was reported. Here's what it is. Here's what we did to resolve the problem. And here's what you have done to make sure that resolution was reached. If there's any type of preventive maintenance that needs to be explained, make sure you explain this to them in terms they can understand. If one of the issues was temp files, make sure they know how to check their temp folders and remove those files. If a defrag had to be performed, make sure they know how to perform that type of defrag on their hard disks. Now some people may disagree, but what I believe is every technician does not know how to solve every single problem with a PC. Sometimes you can't solve it and you need to escalate that to someone higher in your support chain to help resolve this issue. If this happens, make sure to follow through and make sure the customer and the new support person have made contact. If you have to escalate to like a tier 2 support, make sure when you're handing off the customer to the tier 2 person that they have acknowledged each other. And one of the things I can't emphasize enough is before handing that call over to the next level up, make sure you have taken great notes for that person, that tier 2 person or higher. Make sure that you have informed your customer that this issue is beyond your capabilities and that you'll be handing it over. You can't have enough communication, and it only makes everyone more comfortable. Even when this is done, make sure all documentation has been filled out. Make sure that as you do a job and you've completed a job, including documentation that's sufficient, such as cost of parts that you had to use or order, all hours worked, what your rate is for cost per hour, if you had to handle off a situation, if what the steps were to resolving an issue. Make sure all the documentation is completed. Make sure that you record all of your notes from the initial symptoms of the problem all the way to how the problem was solved. And that's how you will successfully complete your calls and your help tickets.